Yes, that's all I need there. Andy and I went in December to see her for my birthday, and that's the first time we've ever been alone together because I've always had my kids. We've been together for 4 years, but we've never gone anywhere.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock. We're going to bring the January 27, 2025 council meeting to order. We'll begin with roll call, please. Here. Item number 3, approval of the agenda. A motion and a second. And roll call.
Yes.
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 Item 4 is our public comment period. This is the time and place for comments for any item other than those that are a public hearing. Did we receive any cards, Jenny, from anyone? Is there anyone in the audience who might have a comment they might like to make during this time? Right then, we will, hearing none, we will move on to item 5, which is consent items, and I'll ask for a motion in a second. And roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Item number 6 is business items A, compensation study and plan report. Chelsea's going to handle that for us.
Yes, so as you all recall, we had a work session in December with a consultant I engaged with. Study. So he presented his findings at the work session in December and finalized a final report. So that final report is in front of you.
Questions from council?
Is that in the non-police union?
Yes, that is correct. There's no recommendations in the final report other than it outlines which positions are behind the midpoint. So my recommendation to the council budget, I budgeted according to where at and how many years if they've served 5 years or less. If they've served 5 years, July 1st, we take them to the midpoint. If they've served less than 5 years, we would work on a plan to get them to the midpoint over their 5-year period. So that alone, the financial impact was about $21,000. All other employees that weren't identified as being behind.
The pilot and the folded ones that were.
Correct.
Else?
What are we, we're just.
Study and plan report. Motion and a second. Here's Jack.
Thank you. Walters?
Yes.
Bowman? Yes. Otis?
Yes.
Sarchet?
Item B, first reading of ordinance 2025-100, amending chapter 165.18, zoning regulations, off-street parking, multi-family requirements. Travis, how's it going?
So for council's consideration tonight is an adjustment or an amendment to the parking regulations specifically related to high-density residential housing. So this discussion began in December of 2024 with the Planning and Zoning Commission. We discussed and reviewed the existing parking regulations, and we deemed that Polk City was probably higher than the commission was comfortable with. Through the month of, or the tail end of December and through the month of January, we went back and we drafted an ordinance, and then we presented it at the P and Z Commission meeting here in January. Essentially, where the commission landed is that they felt they felt comfortable with Polk City being in the upper middle of parking regulations across the metro. And so as part of that, we put together a few scenarios to give both the commission and the council something to look at in terms of what the change that we're proposing is. So after a lot of discussion and some review at 2 meetings with the commission, what we're proposing is an adjustment to apartment complexes continuing to have 1 garage space per unit up to 3 bedrooms, and then above that, it's 2 garage spaces per unit. But then for every garage space, it be counted as a half space towards the total parking requirement, as would be required as if it wouldn't be. So essentially, we worked up 3 scenarios. The current layout, as is labeled on that table, would be for the concept plan we've seen for Allure. That was just the most recent apartment complex that we had to go by. This should no way be construed as being directly related to that project, but that's the example we use to give us an idea of a large-scale, full-size apartment complex. And then we've got 100 units and then a 50-unit complex. So kind of give you an idea of how this change scales. And so, as you can see, under the current layout, as it's currently written, Polk City would require 726 total parking stalls, garage and surface. Under this new regulation would be 561. So there would be 1, 2, 3 municipalities of the ones we researched that would have more parking required, and then 6 or 7 below you guys. We think this is a reasonable approach. We think it puts you more in line with the rest of the metro, but still gives you a lot of the benefits of having those dedicated parking stalls. And after discussion with a couple of developers who specialize or frequently develop apartment complexes, we don't think this is going to hurt Polk City in any manner, because what we've heard is that developers don't mind having garage stalls. It's just that they don't want to have the ocean of pavement and the garage stalls. The garage stalls make money for them. So that's kind of the feedback that we've gotten for the few folks that we've talked to. Be happy to answer any questions the council may have, or dive into any of the discussion that the commission had.
Council? None?
So, no, sorry, I'm trying to absorb. The middle section is that. There, and
So,
the horizontal middle section.
okay,
It says current layout, surface 396.
Yeah.
Garage 330. So is that for Allure?
yes, so
That's an example. So with this, we're reducing, right now, they would be required to have 726 spots, and we're changing that to 560.
correct. And that is purely by allowing each garage stall to count as half a surface stall, in addition to fulfilling the garage requirement.
Okay, so we're doing that, not because of it, but so the 100 unit and 50 unit changes. I think we're in the middle of these
So in all,
communities that are listed.
yep, so essentially if the first 2 columns in each scenario are just used as more or less a worksheet to get those numbers pulled through, the comparison would be the 3rd column of each. So you guys would be lower than West Des Moines, Grimes, and Norwalk, but then higher than all the other communities.
Okay. And it seems like
Yeah.
members of the discussion.
It was either the late 2000s or the early 2010s, and essentially what it was specifically related to was townhomes inundating existing neighborhoods with on-street parking. So essentially overwhelmed existing neighborhoods. Yeah. And so that's the important thing too, is the way that we've written the revision to the code is we're not touching the townhomes, we're just making the distinction of these are the townhome requirements and these are the parking requirements. We're now treating them as separate uses instead of all high-density residential housing.
Okay. And if there's one thing I've learned sitting up here is I do not go against Ron. So, anyway, so again, this, I couldn't hear the beginning.
Yep. In December, and then we, yeah.
Yeah.
And they liked the parking requirements, but they felt that they could give a little bit by counting part of a garage stall towards that requirement.
Yeah, and that, I mean, developers' financial interest, problematic logic. But I do know that we're gonna end up looking at this every time it comes through. Probably should to be appropriately flexible when something comes up. But I don't necessarily have a problem with that. We're updating to go more in line with the larger but somewhat comparable metro communities, at least that makes sense.
And I think one of the impetus for driving this is it's less cost associated and it's more, in general, the more green space that we can allow somebody to construct with, the better facility you're gonna have. And so that's one of the reasons is that we felt that the regulations were high for the apartment complexes.
That's true, unless you push that parking to the street, like you have to on Cherokee, so,
That's true.
Well, we can regulate that, apartment.
well, that's true. And again, it's,
I agree that we don't wanna just react, but I think when there is something new that comes up, that's an appropriate time to revisit. And this, we were higher, but I like the PNC approach that we would like to remain on the high end, but we don't have to be significant. Yeah.
So maybe I think it's a good compliment.
and that probably could just be a function of the time.
Yeah.
It was what it was, and it's outdated now, so.
Yeah, and I genuinely, I don't think either of your regulations is really all that off base. It's just that they were, the oddity you guys had was that you didn't count. You either, you explicitly or required a garage space and you didn't count it. Most communities would do, if they required garage spaces, they counted some portion of it or they didn't explicitly require garage spaces. So I think this brings you more in line with what we're seeing across these different communities.
And in theory, this should give us.
It should help stormwater, it should help just the general look, so you don't have those oceans of pavement that just sit empty all the time.
Or shoehorn stormwater retention where it should.
Correct. And I don't think it's something either that if we go and we see one or two of these and we're like, you know, this isn't the byproduct we wanted, there's not to say that we can't make an adjustment again.
Anything else, Travis, before I say thank you? Okay, so we need a motion and a second on 6B.
So moved.
And roll call.
Polk, yes, Otis,
7, reports and particulars. We'll start with staff. Anything from staff? Anything from council?
I'll just say great job to our fire department. I know they had a tough situation, so huge thank you to those that do serve our community and that have